I could hear a brush move over there. There's something up there. Caesar thought he saw movement. And now we're hearing some weird noise. It doesn't quite sound like an animal. That's fucking Jungle 101. The Indians imitate animals.
Within man an unrelenting desire to explore distant horizons, to experience a world that is completely new. This desire is what led Spanish conquistadors and Jesuit missionaries to explore and colonize Paraguay during the 16th and 17th centuries. They were, of course, not the first inhabitants of Paraguay, as the land had already been settled by various indigenous tribes, each one unique in its language and culture. The story of these natives and of Paraguay is intertwined, the influence of one on the other braided together into an eternal knot. As we march forward through Paraguay's history, we look at great wars of the past, wars such as the War of the Triple Alliance, where Paraguay was reduced to almost nothing after a brutal defeat against the allied forces of Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. Or the Chaco War, where Paraguay defended their vast northern wilderness against invading Bolivians. All of this history has molded and shaped this land into the country that we now see today. Asunción, the capital of Paraguay, is a modern city filled with all the luxurious amenities one could expect. There are endless sights to see and places to eat. You may like to try a warm cheese-filled chipa with cocido, or maybe some tasty beiju. Or perhaps you'd prefer to spend a lazy afternoon in the shade, sipping on some cold tereré, a local herbal drink. The choice is up to you. But if you're like the explorers of old and filled with a desire for adventure, then look no further. Once outside the city, you won't believe the amazing flora and fauna that awaits you. Towering waterfalls, endless rivers, animals of every shape and size. If you travel far enough, you may have an encounter with an actual Indian, but be careful not to go too deep into the jungle. There are still unknown dangers left to be discovered. Trans Chaco Airlines proudly invites you aboard to be an explorer, to have an adventure in Paraguay.
Our world is a world of change. It is a world of constant adaptation and evolution. The relentless progression of time slowly pushes our species through the universe, each day one step farther from where we were the day before. This steadfast human advancement has shepherded us through the pages of history, guiding us to where we now find ourselves today, a modern world, surrounding us at all times, its unrelenting presence invading every aspect of our lives. In dealing with the constant changes of our modern society, it is easy to get lost in the storm and forget how we got here. It is easy to forget just how recently we as a species escaped from the mud and began to thrive. Paraguay. Nestled in the heart of South America, is home to 19 indigenous ethnicities, the original inhabitants of this land. These tribes are spread all across the country, from the green southern farmlands, home to the peaceful Guaraní tribes, to the wild northern Chaco, home to one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth outside of the Amazon, the fierce Ayoreos. For centuries, these indigenous peoples were the masters of this land, but in a modern world have now been forced to take a back seat. The society around them constantly advancing, leaving them behind to pick up the pieces of their shattered culture. One such example is the Macau tribe. These people, once the kings of the forests in this region, are now left begging in the streets, making ends meet by selling bracelets, monkey paws, and other such trinkets. They have been forced to adapt to this new world, regardless of their desires to participate or not. Similarly, here we see a group of the Guaraní tribe, the most culturally significant indigenous ethnicity of Paraguay. These people, responsible for nearly all traditional Paraguayan culture and language, have been forced to live in the streets of Asunción due to their lands being stolen by soy farmers in the southeast. Their misfortune is seemingly a mere inconvenience for those who pass by in their cars. For the last 4 years, these families have scraped by each day fighting to survive, uncertain about their future, unfairly treated by a system that just wishes they would go away. The modern world has invaded and is contaminating the indigenous way of life. It is weakening their traditions. It is erasing their languages. It is destroying their cultures. A rock bashed by the ocean is eventually turned to sand. The indifferent power of erosion leaves no survivors. In 2014, American Nathan Seastrand was first introduced to Paraguay while serving a religious mission for his church. During his time there, he fell in love with the country and, after completing his missionary service, returned multiple times over the following years. He shared videos of his travels on social media and began to amass a large following online. As he traveled, he became more interested in indigenous culture and even began to study the indigenous language Guaraní.
Era brave petin instrumento a Guaraní.
In 2022, his brother, Zachary Seastrand, joined him in Paraguay, where they began plans to shoot a documentary film about the indigenous tribes and their process of harvesting wild honey. On a budget of merely $3,000, and with no additional crew, they visited multiple communities over many months, documenting their journey along the way and sharing their experience online. Nathan is seen on camera, and Zachary behind it, both key characters in this story. Equally as important, Nathan's recovered travel journal, a detailed log providing key insights into their journey. Access to these communities is not normally given to foreigners. However, by showing a genuine interest and love for the people, they formed friendships with the tribal leaders, and special permission was granted. This film is a compilation of footage they shot during 6 expeditions and 8 months of travel through Paraguay. It represents a unique snapshot in time of indigenous cultures that are so rapidly changing that in the coming years, if current trends persist, will soon be rendered indistinguishable from the more dominant Paraguayan culture and will eventually disappear forever.
It is a new day here among the Guaraní. We drink hot yerba mate, a traditional drink of this tribe. They tell me that their people were the first to cultivate this herb, and that without the Guaraní, tereré and mate would not exist. This Guaraní community is one of many spread throughout the Atlantic forest of southeast Paraguay. The cacique, their tribal leader, has granted me permission to stay with them, to study, and learn more about their traditions and way of life. I am told that electricity has been installed in several dwellings, a recent government effort to improve this impoverished community. They teach me about mandioca, a root-like plant that is eaten with almost every meal. A nearby stream provides fresh water for some families. Here they collect water and clean their clothing. Their dwellings are simple structures, yet prove to be quite effective against the strong jungle rain. Tapir meat hangs in the sun to dry. The community hunt was successful, and now many will have food for days. Their resourcefulness is apparent. A large well serves as another source of drinking water. Back at the cacique's house, I am shown a freshly installed water spigot. With running water now so easily accessible, the need for streams and wells will disappear.
Sí, tiene un poco la cambio.
In this community, they only speak Guaraní, the second official language of Paraguay. When the Spanish settled these lands, they believed Guaraní was a language just as developed as Spanish, so they fought to preserve it. And now, today, almost every Paraguayan speaks both Spanish and Guaraní. I've picked up a bit here and there. I am invited to share a meal of chicken and rice with them. These people are both humble and gracious. A humble broom made of sticks, in the back, a large government-donated truck, broken, the Guaraní with no means to get it fixed. These inconsistencies are scattered throughout this community, hints of modern technology mixed with indigenous ways of the past. Two worlds colliding. Today I am to be shown more of the community. The tapir meat has been distributed evenly amongst the families. The living conditions of the Guaraní would be considered difficult by many, but for them, this is the natural way of life. And yet, even here, simple modern technology is present. Virginia and her two indigenous albino boys, an oddity even in this world. She shows me her diseased feet. It seems that the influence of modern medicine has yet to make its way into this community. However, since Virginia is the village shaman, her magical healing smoke is all they want anyways. She instructs me to be taken to their holy temple, the place where she performs healing rituals for the village. The Guaraní continue to worship their ancestral god Tupã, having rejected Christianity against all attempts by the Spanish to convert them. They play an assortment of musical instruments inspired from what they saw the Spanish play when they first invaded their lands. This area is rapidly changing. The soy industry is constantly expanding, stealing land from its rightful indigenous owners. But when there's money to be made, the Guaraní are the first to lose. Suddenly, without a word, all the women in the village begin to walk towards the temple. They begin to smoke large pipes filled with tobacco. They believe the smoke is holy and contains powers of health and protection. Before a hunt, the arrows of the hunters are covered in smoke to ensure a successful kill. It is my final day with the Guaraní. I am told they have a parting gift for me. They have brought me wild honey harvested on their land. It is delicious. And so now my journey begins. I will travel throughout Paraguay, visiting new tribes and learning about their cultures, always in search of honey.
Even though the Guaraní remain physically isolated from society, the long-reaching fingers of the modern world have slipped in and are changing their way of life. Running water and electricity are useful additions to their community, but with them come unintended consequences. Consequences that, over time, will inevitably cause the gradual decline and disappearance of this important culture. The following clip is of an interview with Padre José Sanardine, an Italian anthropologist that in 1978 moved to Paraguay and decided to live with the Ayoreo tribe in the northern Chaco. After living with them for 20 years, his knowledge of indigenous Paraguay culture, especially the Ayoreo, is surpassed by no one, making him the world's leading authority on the subject. He now lives a quiet life as a priest in Asunción.
Bueno, yo nací en la montaña del norte de Italia y vine a Paraguay hace 45 años, cuando ustedes no habían nacido todavía. Y cuando vine a Paraguay, mi primer impacto, mi primera ida al Chaco fue justamente con el grupo de los Ayoreo en el año 78, cuando había gente que había salido del monte hace poquísimo tiempo. Y todos me decían, no te vayas allá porque son salvajes, son malos, te van a matar, cosas así. Viene un anciano ahí que me habla en Ayoreo, yo cero, no sabía nada de Ayoreo. Y me dijo que si tú quieres quedar aquí con nosotros, tienes que aprender muchas cosas. Para mí eso fue una lección, la elección más importante de mi vida y de todos los libros de antropología que he leído. Tienes que aprender muchas cosas. Y han pasado 45 años y sigo aprendiendo. A mí me dicen, ¿qué te vas siempre a hacer a ellos? ¿Qué le vas a enseñar a los pueblos indígenas? Me dicen la gente. Yo digo, no voy a enseñar nada, voy a aprender. Voy a aportar aquí la enseñanza de ellos porque nosotros necesitamos de ellos, de su pensamiento, de su modelo de vida, de su filosofía, de su espiritualidad también.
I now journey north in a small military plane, destined for the isolated town of Fuerte Olimpo. Located on the banks of the Paraguay River. Kiraban, the vessel that will take me the remainder of the journey. 6 hours upriver to the indigenous community of the Tomarahos, over 100 years old and still running. This boat brings life to this region, its floating market fulfilling the vital service of providing goods and supplies to the communities that dot the river. The boat is packed with people, indigenous who are returning home after voting in a recent political election. Their interest in politics is minimal. However, the money they receive for voting for a specific party motivates them to put in the effort. I am headed deep into the Paraguay Pantanal, the world's largest wetland, an area filled with all sorts of wildlife: caiman, jaguars, honeybees. The journey is long. Some of the indigenous youth browse Facebook, looking at girls from neighboring tribes. Others flick through TikTok. It is dark when we arrive. Their cacique, Nestor, takes me to my lodging to rest. This community is not at all like what I expected. Instead of the haphazardness of a traditional community, I find myself in a well-developed village with structure and planning. Clearly defined property lines marked by fences. This is uncommon. Hand-washed clothing hung to dry on a satellite dish. A clash of cultures. What has happened to this place? What remains of their traditions? I am beckoned to the forest to observe a ritual performed only by the males, a traditional rain dance. Several of the youth have been painted black, their faces covered with cloth. One time around the tree and they are finished. This is not as elaborate as what I had been told. Afterwards, an older male dresses up in traditional clothing to sing to me a traditional song of their people. As I observe, I begin to realize what is happening. These traditional dances and songs, which once served important functions within their culture, are now nothing more than a means to make some money. After his performance and dance, I am asked to pay. The Tomarahos, as remote as they are, have been transformed by the modern world. The power of money changing their traditional ways of life. A new day brings new adventure. Today we will be traveling deep into the jungle to hunt caiman. I will merely observe, as it is illegal for anyone but the indigenous to kill caiman. We pass by their cemetery, How would their ancestors feel about the changes of this tribe? There isn't much movement in this area. We must travel deeper. I place a trail camera in case anything wanders by while we are gone. After some time, we find what we are looking for, an area busy with life. But now it's time to hunt. Caiman are tough as nails, difficult to kill. Back in the village, they prepare the beast, who seems to still have some fight left in him. Tonight we will dine on fried caiman. My feelings are torn as I think about this community. Their willingness to embrace the modern world has led to rapid advancement and progression for their people. However, this has come with a cost. The elderly in the village are moved to tears talking about how things once were. The need to sell their traditions for money obviously upsets them. The Tomaraho are a curious people. They are interested in the world around them. They are resilient and willing to adapt. Old ways have died. New ways are taking their place. They no longer harvest honey in the forest, but rather in a bee box. world we live in is always changing. The Tomarahos have seen this and have made the decision not to be left behind. For as much as I desire them to remain true to their heritage, who am I to wish they remain in the past? I cannot document what was, but what is. And so, the time has come for me to leave and continue on with my journey.
What was once a remote and traditional indigenous community has now turned into a settlement more reminiscent of a frontier town from the American Old West. The river and Akitaban's floating market provide prominent access to the modern world, allowing the Tomarahos to engage with society in a way they wouldn't otherwise be able to. This has led to a notable deviation from traditions and customs, which now only seem useful to make a quick buck and purchase a cold beer.
Y se encuentran con un mundo que es hostil a ellos. El Paraguay, a pesar de 200 años y más de independencia, todavía no reconoce, solo en el papel reconoce a los pueblos indígenas, en la Constitución Nacional, en las leyes, que son muy buenas, todo. Legalmente la jurisprudencia perfecta, pero en la práctica no reconoce la existencia de la diversidad y de la riqueza del mundo cultural indígena. Y entonces, poco a poco está destruyendo sus símbolos, su vida, su territorio.
Jasukavenda, a sacred mountain, believed by the Pai Tavyterâ to be the birthplace of man. I am here now, in need of its power, not in search of honey, but of a blessing. A blessing from the shaman of this land, one that will ease my fears and guide me forward. Their homes remain traditional. There is no electricity or running water in this community. The village shaman agrees to perform the blessing and leads me towards their temple. My face is marked with red dye, granting me permission to proceed. The shaman, using her powers, pushes the rain clouds from the sky, allowing the sun to peek through. This ground is sacred, and I am required to remove my shoes before continuing. Suddenly, the ritual begins. We form 2 lines, one for the men and one for the women. With each step, we get closer to the temple. Once inside, we are guided through a series of holy movements passed down from generation to generation. Shisha, a traditional drink made from fermented mandioca and saliva. Everyone must drink. I am instructed to sit in the middle of the temple, the shaman behind me, ready to begin. The blessing is now complete. The cacique and shaman share stories about their people and their land. They are a people steeped in tradition that they hold dear and preserve. The youth are taught the ways of their fathers so that they may in turn teach their future children. Food and supplies are given out even though they aren't truly needed. The Pai Tavyterâ are self-sufficient, at one with the land and nature. They enjoy a simple life, far away from modern problems. I pray that this will always be so.
Surprisingly, the Pai Tavyterâ have managed to keep the modern world at bay, remaining true to their traditional way of life and living off the land. While they aren't completely isolated and enjoy the occasional humanitarian visit, their remote location affords them the luxury of holding fast to their culture, ensuring its survival for generations to come. However, as the years go by, encroaching farmlands slowly chip away at these native territories. One day, the modern world will force them to relocate and in the process, lose everything they have worked so hard to preserve.
Infine hay come un'opposizione, los terratenientes, incluso la instituzione del Estado como el Inter, que ha vendido más de una vez los territorios indígenas ya titulados, entonces hay sobreposición de títulos, ahí empiezan los problemas, los jueces dan razón a los terratenientes y no a los indígenas. Entonces se van por la calle, vienen aquí, están ahí, la calle General Artigas, ahí como peor que los perros y los gatos de la casa.
Government housing, electricity, running water, the Aché have benefited from many modern upgrades. But how does a tribe such as this, so removed from their roots, stay connected to them? How do these masters of bow and arrow stay sharp and not lose their skill? The answer is by participating in frequent hunting parties in their ancestral land. And I have been invited to join them. We are now in Paraguay, one of the last great preserved forests in southeast Paraguay. Here we will hunt, sleep, and most importantly, search for wild honey. I maneuver through the trees, led by the observant and knowledgeable Aché. Their skill in the forest is remarkable, their internal compass guiding us where we need to go. The density of the vegetation is suffocating. This forest is like a maze, and only the Aché know the way through. After what feels like hours, we find a place to make camp. A sanctuary in this sea of green. The Aché work quickly to clear the area. This mastery comes from generations of living in the jungle until being forced into contact in the 1980s. Referred to as Guayaki, meaning white rats from the jungle. They were brutally hunted by Paraguayans, until later being given land to settle far away from this forest. This unfair treatment is still felt by their community, even today. wild fruit, a satisfying treat for these two boys. One day, they will be leading the hunting party and must learn all they can from their parents. Leaving the women at camp, the men set off in search of prey. It appears they have found the home of an akuti, a small rodent-like mammal that lives underground. Their technique for capturing this animal is to plug up all the possible escape tunnels and jab a machete into the ground. This akuti is proving difficult to capture. After an unsuccessful hunt, we return to camp. In our absence, a swarm of bees has invaded our camp, covering all of our gear and equipment. The Aché act quickly, lighting a fire, the smoke acting as a pacifier to control the buzzing horde. Unfortunately, the smoke has little effect. I cover myself in dirt in an attempt to discourage the bees, but it is to no use. They continue to attack, stinging everything they touch. Against our best efforts, we can't get the bees to leave. They are here to stay. Storm clouds gather in the distance, their dark bellies foreshadowing the future to come. Despite the bees, the Aché continue on with their tasks. Mandioca has been found. Also found, a wasp's nest, dried larvae still inside. On the list of things not found, honey. The approaching storm in the distance convinces the Aché to construct a shelter. The bees consistently remind us of their presence. Heart of palm cooked over the fire. I am now full, but still very thirsty. We locate a stream near camp and refill our containers. The cold water refreshes my body. With a sting count over 25 and no end in sight, I have made the decision to leave camp and make my way back through the maze. My search for honey has ended in a brutal defeat.
It is not entirely clear what happened after Nathan and Zachary left the bee-ridden Aché encampment. However, an examination of Nathan's travel journal offers us some insight. Night has fallen fast, and we have yet to escape this dense jungle. We have lost the path and are unsure of which direction to head. In a desperate attempt to locate the trail, we are flying our drone above the canopy to get a bird's eye view. We have spotted the trail. Now begins the 8-mile trek out of the forest. The path is dark and narrow. In the bushes off to the left, we hear movement, less than 15 feet away. A large creature has been startled by our presence. Suddenly, we hear a deep growl, warning us to stay away. We are frozen, hesitant to advance. Down the path, we see a large figure step out of the trees. It is a jaguar, its eyes glowing in the light of our headlamps. It is staring directly at us. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone, leaving the trail free for our escape. Nathan and Zachary made it out of the jungle that night, and with them, a greater understanding and respect for the harsh reality of jungle living, something that the Aché have braved for centuries. Today, the Aché live in a modern community, with recent government-funded housing that has raised their standard of living. However, this act is overshadowed by a complicated past of relocation and abuse that they have suffered.
Vos antes, cuando naciste, cuando eras joven, niña, vivías en la selva, ¿verdad?
Mi papá está murió, mi madre está murió toda.
Entonces, cuando los paraguayos entraron en el bosque,
Ahí ella murió.
¿y por qué los paraguayos entraron en el bosque?
No sé,
En la década de 1950, hasta esa década, a quien mataba un indio ayoreo, moro se le decía en ese tiempo, era un militar que en el Chaco mataban, recibía un premio. Y había carteles que decían, haga patria, mate a un indio moro.
In spite of the abuse that they have suffered, they continue to strive to maintain their culture. This effort is evident, especially when participating in traditional customs, such as hunting in their ancestral forest. Still, it is difficult to preserve their heritage while a modern world pulls and tugs from all directions.
La relación cada vez más complicada entre el mundo indígena y la sociedad nacional, que por otra parte ya no pueden vivir aislados. Esos grupos de Ayoreo viven aislados, no sé hasta cuándo, pero tienen el tiempo contado. Tarde o temprano van a tener que entregarse. Ellos salen del monte no por deseo de salir del monte, yo lo entendí así, sino porque no pueden ya vivir. El peligro de los jaguares y la falta de agua, de alimentos, ya la selva no es como era antes, las aguadas se han trastocado, a veces hay sequía, a veces hay incendio, cosas que antes no existían, en fin, todo el cambio climático que le afecta. O sea, como que ellos están saliendo no por propia voluntad, sino por la necesidad de sobrevivencia.
My guide's name is Augusto, an expert in all things indigenous. He has told me stories of a tribe up the river where life is easy and honey is abundant. Celso, the cacique of the Enlhet, has agreed to take us to his community and show us this honey. After the necessary preparations are made, we embark on our voyage up the Paraguay River. The early success of my first expedition is a forgotten memory. I am now plagued with thoughts of failure, that I will never find what I am searching for. What new nightmares await me at the end of this river? Hours drift by, yet the river winds on, never ending. My eyelids grow heavy as the hum of the motor lulls me to sleep. I awake, my forehead covered in hot sweat. We have arrived. Not much is known about the ancient culture of the Enlhet. Long ago, evangelical missionaries from Brazil converted this tribe and brainwashed them into giving up all of their indigenous traditions. I ask Celso about their ancient traditions. We no longer practice those satanic rituals, he says. This sentiment is felt throughout the village. Despite the rejection of their true ancient culture, they are not yet completely won over by the modern world. Life in this community is peaceful and inviting. Perhaps when my journey is complete, I will settle down in a village such as this. The warm evening air blows through the trees, its gentle touch calming. The worry and doubt I had earlier has disappeared, giving way to the promise of tomorrow. The world wakes early here on the river. The morning critters already busy at work. My journey has left me tired, but I still have the strength to continue. We board a tractor with several of the men and set off deep into the jungle. For several weeks, this tribe has been laboring to construct a bridge that, hopefully, will soon connect them by land to the outside world. Up until now, the only access to this village has been by river, and they hope to change that. This tribe is different from the others. They are skilled with modern tools and work as a team. They behave more akin to ranchers than indigenous. This is the result of many years of exposure to the modern world. I cannot say whether it is good or bad, but simply that it is, and that I am here to document it. But this is not the end of my journey. My guide and I leave the work camp, heading deeper into the jungle. We are accompanied by Thomas, the local bee expert, who takes us the rest of the way in his wooden boat. He has located a large hive of honeybees. I sit back and watch, in awe of this master and his craft. Thomas invites us back to his home to show us how he processes the honey. First, he squeezes the honey from the combs. using a shirt, strains the debris from the honey. Now, having found honey, I can finally rest and bask in the harmony of this peaceful village. Once finished, the new bridge will give this community even greater access to the modern world. I hope, despite the coming changes, they can maintain an element of this peace, of this freedom. One day, this community will have completely evolved, its current form existing only in memory. I feel fortunate to have experienced it while it still lasts, for there are few things in this world that have evaded the winds of change.
With the modern world so close, the eventual submission to its power is all but inevitable for the Enlhet tribe. Much of their ancient tradition has been either forgotten or willingly cast aside. However, their advantageous location on the river has allowed them to remain in charge and decide for themselves what their fate will be. Having finally achieved their goal, returning to civilization with bottles of wild honey, it would appear that Nathan and Zachary's journey had finally come to an end. And yet, one expedition remained.
The only tribe that is outside of the Amazon basin that is uncontacted exists here in Paraguay. They are the uncontacted Ayoreos. In that ethnicity of Ayoreo, there are two factions, the ones who are now modernized and have entered into civilization, and then there are the uncontacteds. They are known to be quite violent.
En diciembre del año 86, vos conociste esa historia.
Sí.
Del año 86, estaban su grupo de silvícola ahí en la zona, antes de abajo de Madrejón, ahí a la izquierda, que fueron contactados por un grupo de Campo Loro. De 34, yo creo que se fueron en forma pacífica, pero la forma pacífica se convirtió en una masacre. Y ahí en pocos minutos mataron, o sea, los no contactados mataron a 5 de los de Campo Loro.
Se extravió un austriaco, está con paradero desconocido en zona de Cerro León en el Alto Chaco.
9 días desaparece un aventurero austriaco, tengo entendido, Blanca.
Nada se sabe hasta ahora, repito, lleva 10 días de desaparecido.
On April 28, 2018, Austrian tourist Wilhelm Wabneg entered the Paraguayan National Park, Defensor del Chaco, with plans to visit and explore an area known as Guaraní. Measuring nearly 2 million acres in size, this park is known for being extremely dry, thorny, and dense, making it nearly impossible to traverse. There are considerable dangers in this region, mainly the lack of water sources, aggressive wildlife, such as jaguars, and wild, uncontacted indigenous tribes. When Wilhelm entered the park, he recorded his name in a registry. This was the last anyone ever saw of him, as it was soon discovered that he had mysteriously vanished. The only remaining traces of the Austrian were his vehicle, some empty water bottles, and splatters of blood on a nearby trail. To this day, his fate remains unknown. Members of the Indigenous Ayoreo community at Camp Loro helped assist in the search for the Austrian. Among them was an elderly indigenous male named Gabide, who had previously lived for 30 years in the forest as a wild, uncontacted Ayoreo.
¿Y cuántos tigres han matado? ¿Cuántos jaguares?
Cuatro para otro me mata, yo mata.
¿Qué dijo?
Un hombre y dos tigres.
Un hombre y dos tigres. Él era un guerrero antes, ¿verdad?
After much thought, Nathan and Zachary decided that the final place they would search for honey would be in Defensor del Chaco with members of the Ayoreo tribe.
The average person is scared of the jungle for the wrong reasons. They're scared of animals and bugs, and they think you go out there and you're gonna get killed by a jaguar, they think you're gonna get attacked by a snake, you're gonna get bitten by a million bugs. Those aren't the real dangers of the forest. The real dangers of the forest are other human beings.
Well, I've been told that there are still groups that are uncontacted and they can be dangerous. No, I don't fear for my life. However, I will say that the completion of this documentary comes first.
After receiving special government permission from Maydays, the Ministry of the Environment and Sustainable Development, they journeyed north into the farthest reaches of the great Paraguayan Chaco, accompanied by Cesar Catibeke, a Paraguayan wilderness survival expert, and 2 Ayoreo guides, Pacheco and Gabide.
¿Qué es tu opinión de esos indígenas, los ayoreos indígenas que todavía viven ahí?
Yo lo considero una riqueza para el país, una joya, un diamante escondido, porque representan un eslabón de la vida humana fundamental, que es la relación profunda y directa con la naturaleza y con los espíritus de la naturaleza. O sea, que es la verdadera vida humana. Sí. La vida humana. O sea, el ser humano no es un ser que está por encima de toda la naturaleza, es parte de la naturaleza.
Guaraní, home of the uncontacted Ayoreos. Here, Nathan and Zachary will make their final expedition. After 8 hours on the road, they reach Camp Loro and meet up with their guides. From there, they head north, traveling deep into the northern Chaco. After 6 more hours on dusty roads, they arrive. Here, in Kukani, the uncontacted Ayoreos roam free. Here, you must always be on your guard for what may be watching you from the trees. Jaguars also inhabit this jungle. Jaguars that are twice the size of their Amazonian cousins. The red-footed tortoise. These tortoises are easy to catch and form a main part of the uncontacted Ayoreo diet. Gabiday, who once lived in this very forest as an uncontacted Ayoreo, prepares the tortoise to be cooked. His method is straightforward. Simply place the tortoise, still alive, on the fire and wait until it's well done. In Ayoreo culture, killing a jaguar is a true sign of strength and courage, as is killing a Kowan, meaning white man. Gabiday has killed 2 jaguars and 1 man, making Gabiday a truly fearsome warrior. Here we see Gabiday preparing a traditional Ayoreo axe, used to cut wood, but mainly to harvest honey. Pacheco, the other guide, holds an Ayoreo spear fashioned from a bayonet blade found from the 1932 War of the Chaco. Gabiday, who once lived naked in the forest, can now read and write and carries his notebook with him wherever he goes. They will spend the night here at base camp, and tomorrow journey into the jungle in search of honey. The Ayoreos are the most feared of all the indigenous tribes in Paraguay. They are tall, strong, and fierce warriors. They hunt with bows and arrows, wearing the skin of the jaguars they've killed. They wear square sandals to hide the direction they travel. They bury alive their unwanted children and weak elders. They are also rumored to participate in cannibalism. With Gabiday and Pacheco as guides, and Caesar as protection, they set off into the jungle. For hours, they fight their way through the thick brush, trusting completely in the knowledge and wisdom of their guides. This is a hellish land. The air is hot and dry. The plants are covered in thorns. Water is non-existent. And yet, there are signs that someone has been here before. They continue on, alert to any movement. A false alarm. Still, this provides the group with an opportunity. Gabbade has found a nest of tortoises, enough to feed everyone for a couple days. Apart from tortoises, the Ayoreos also enjoy rabbits, lizards, tapir, and armadillos. But their favorite of all is wild honey. Using rope, they climb up into the trees and harvest the honey with their special axe, storing it in a gourd. Life in this land is difficult, and sweet things are hard to come by. For them, honey is something precious, meant to be protected and preserved. In the jungle, at night, it's vital to maintain the campfire lit. It serves as a warning to jaguars who avoid fire and to anyone else that might be watching. Guaraní is dry and has very little water. If you wish to survive here, you must bring your own. But water is heavy, and in this heat is exhausted quickly. In a way, any expedition here is a race against time. Can you make it back before your water runs out? Small signs of life hint at something bigger. Chopped wood left behind by someone. Gabaday confirms that this is the work of an uncontacted Ayoreo. Despite all the spikes and thorns, there is a certain beauty to this place. A beauty that only a handful of people on Earth have ever experienced. The majority of them being uncontacted Ayoreos. Strange noises and an alert on the trail camera wakens the camp. What was rummaging around in the darkness? Was it another turtle? Or something bigger? The next morning, everyone is on high alert. Caution must be exercised if they are to continue forward. However, a more pressing issue arises. The water reserves are dangerously low and won't be sufficient for the return journey. But Gabaday, accessing his vast knowledge of the forest, has a plan. He locates a specific plant and begins to dig. He is looking for its root. Water, squeezed from the root. This is how the uncontacted survive in such an inhospitable area.
alcohol.
It tastes like coconut water. With their water problem solved, they decide to push ahead, unsuccessful so far in locating honey. Gabade calls the group to halt. He has spotted tracks. It is an Ayoreo footprint.
I could hear a brush move over there. There's something up there. Caesar thought he saw movement. And now we're hearing some weird noise. It doesn't quite sound like an animal. That's fucking jungle 101. The Indians imitate animals. Didn't you hear that like weird?
The danger is too great, and they must leave. A day's journey still stands between them and base camp. They must spend one more night here in this jungle, which will prove to be their last.
It is our last night in Kukani, but it is not our last adventure. Tomorrow we leave, and yes, without any honey. However, as we sit here in the jungle, eating turtle, I reflect not on what we have lost, but on what we have found. This protected area is crucial. It is a sanctuary against the rest of the world. The uncontacted Ayoreos are precious and must be protected and preserved. It amazes me to think that somewhere, out there, among the thorn and dirt, they are there, surviving, completely cut off from the modern world.
An oasis in a desert, providing life to those that live here. If you look closely, you can almost imagine them gathering water for their village. The uncontacted Ayoreos are a time machine, offering us a peek backwards through the ages. A glimpse at their world shows us a look into our past. However, the opposite is also true. Our present is, regrettably, an indication of their future. But the hope remains that for as long as their land remains protected by the government, they will continue on, unmarked by our modern world. As for the tribes that are now part of our world, they must adapt. It certainly isn't fair to them or their culture, but the ever-advancing world around us will compel them to do so, regardless of whether they want to or not.
La cultura, nosotros debemos considerar que una cultura no es algo estático, no es algo fijo, porque nosotros mismos, vos, él, yo, continuamente adquirimos nueva tecnología, nuevas ideas, nuevas costumbres, nuevas normas de vida.
Still, the process of acclimation can be softened through humanitarian and government aid. Much good on this front has already been done to help these groups, but there is still room for more. Much more.
And now, after having found honey, our journey is complete.
As we look back at their search for honey, we see two stories unfold. The first is the story of the Indigenous, living in our modern world. The second is the story of two brothers, filming a documentary bound together on a journey through the unknown. Together, they had many failures and triumphs, but through it all, they had each other. Because in the end, this film was never really just about finding honey.
Muy bien.
Saque ha sido picado 14 veces.